When we did a Q&A at the film festival a couple of months ago, you talked about a few films that were sort of important to you, maybe not in very direct ways, but things that you kept in mind. I remember you mentioned The Apartment and being there, if I remember correctly. And I think it's striking because those are films that are notable for combining some very, very different tones together, which I think is also what Mitty does. Was that one reason why those films were important to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're making a movie, you try to, you try to look at as many sources of inspiration as you can, both as, tonally and visually, and just for a feeling. And sometimes it can be like one thing from one movie and one thing from another movie. But those films, I think everybody, I think there's a few films that when you go out to make a movie, you sort of always get drawn back to. And The Graduate, I think, you can make any kind of movie, you look at The Graduate, get inspired. The Apartment is one of those too. I think a lot of people have been inspired by that movie. And being there, Hal Ashby's movies, I think about Hal Ashby's movies, I feel like they created their own genre. He created his own genre. It was a time when I think, he was making movies where you didn't have to get sort of locked into what, saying this movie's a comedy or this movie's a drama or this movie's an action movie. It was just, you could just make a movie about a character and it would have humor and drama and be a lot of different things. And he did that, I think, better than anybody. But for me, when making a movie, you look at all these different great films that inspire you, but then you try to, sort of use them to inspire you and to talk about as reference points with the crew and the cast. And we screened a couple of those movies just to, not with any intention other than just to look at them and experience them. And then you just kind of have to let that stuff go, and then you sort of hopefully find your own tone with the movie. And I always felt like with this movie, it was just I had to trust that it was going to find its own tone. I knew it would be there would be a lot of different things going on, and the process of editing the movie would be where I'd figure out what it could hold and what it didn't, what felt too broad, what felt too serious. And I definitely learned that along the way. As I'd look at scenes, I go, wow, when I was shooting that, I really thought this scene should have been, I thought this was going to be this big emotional scene, and I'm watching it going, no, I was totally wrong on that, and I was trying to scale back on it as much as I can. And then other scenes where they're just too broad, just too funny, not too funny, but just too silly, It's interesting because when you're making a comedy, usually you wouldn't ever cut something because it's too funny. You should be lucky enough to have a scene that's too funny. But for this movie, there was a couple of fantasies that we cut because they just felt too sketchy, maybe, or something. There was a scene with Kristen and I where when Walter walks over to her when he has the next clue, and right before they go for their walk towards Central Park, and he sees her, and we went into this sort of a Downton Abbey-esque fantasy where she's, the lady of the house, and I'm a manservant, and named Manfree, and it was funny, and we shot it, and but immediately when I saw it, I was like, this is too much like a sketch or something, and so that was a learning process, making the film and then editing the final version as we went along. There was, like I said, other scenes that seemed too heavy that I tried to temper also.